We've now seen destructuring off of objects and function arguments, but what is this new syntax really doing for us besides just saving us a few key presses, right? Like, is there anything more to that? Any different design or different thing that we can use to improve the code that we write? Let's look at a practical example of destructuring this section, and I want to show you how we can use destructuring to improve our code base, and more importantly, the way that we write our code in a big way. All right, so we're going to take this example in a little bit of a roundabout fashion, so bear with me for a little bit. All right, we're kind of going to work through the example a little bit and then do kind of a big reveal at the end. So here's the example. I want to say that I want to write a function that is going to take a username and a password, and I want to save it to a database or just something like that. So we'll call this function signup. So it'll be like signing up a user. So let's say that we write this function out. We'll sign up a username and a password. And inside of here, we basically do something to create a new user. I don't really care exactly what we're doing in here. I just want to say like it's happening in there. Now later on, maybe we call signup with a username of, I don't know, my name and my password. And so at this point in time, yeah, everything's totally reasonable. Nothing crazy here. Totally reasonable. Everything looks totally fine. I have signup. I have two arguments, argument 1, argument 2, nothing out of the ordinary here. Totally reasonable code. Let's say some time goes by, however, and maybe you decide that whenever you sign up a user, you also want the user to have to provide maybe their email address, maybe their birth date, and maybe also where they currently live, so like their city. Okay, so let's enhance our code a little bit. Let's change out this function to add in those additional methods, or excuse me, arguments. So the second argument might be an email, and then maybe we'll have a date of birth, and then maybe a city as well. Okay, so then let's fix up the signup call as well to include that information of 1/1/1990, or whenever you were born. Oops, forgot the email in there. My email at example.com, and then finally current city. Maybe I live in New York. Okay, so all right, this is kind of growing a little bit, but it's definitely manageable. I can see username, password, email, date of birth, and city. Okay, not bad. All right, not bad. I can deal with this still. Nonetheless, I want to point out that even when I was making this call right here, even when I was adding these arguments, I made a little mistake in there, and that was not planned. Trust me, I didn't actually plan to make that mistake, where I put the date of birth before I put the email, right? I kind of made a little mistake there on the arguments list. So let's keep that in mind, and I want to make a little change to our code base here. I want to say maybe we define this signup function right here, but then we call the function like in some completely other file, or maybe like way later on down this file. So like maybe we have other code and other code, just like all this other stuff. So we're just going to say that this signup or our calling of signup is set some arbitrarily different location, somewhere completely different in our code base. And so kind of what I'm getting at here is that if it's in a different area of the code base and I ever want to kind of change around signup, or I want to change the number of arguments that I'm passing to it, I would need to first go look at signup. I would need to memorize, okay, it takes, write the username, password, email, date of birth, and the city. And then specifically, it takes those arguments in that very particular order. And so if I then, way down here, I want to do another call to sign up, then I need to remember, okay, let's see, username, maybe we're going to make reference to username right here, password, okay, next one, email, and then city, right? Oh, okay, wait, no, date of birth. And then, yeah, there we go, then the city. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is that we've got this really long argument list like this, and we've got this really long list of arguments, it becomes pretty taxing to remember exactly what order they need to be passed in as. That's the entire point. That's what I'm trying to get at here. When you've got a very long argument list for a function, it starts to get a little bit more challenging to kind of figure out exactly what's going on here. So one possible solution that I could take here, or one possible solution to this to avoid this really long list of arguments, is to say that instead of passing a list of strings, maybe I could instead pass an object that contains all of these different properties. Okay, so let's try out that solution. I'm going to go down to the bottom. I'm just going to clean that up for now. And I'm going to say that I'm going to make a maybe a user object right here, and it's going to contain the username, password, email, all that different stuff. So I've got a username of my name, a password of my password, an email of my email at example.com, a date of birth, let's do this right, so date of birth 1/1/1900, whatever, and a city of New York. Okay, so what I'm doing here, my intent is to change the argument list, or the form of the arguments. So instead of passing in a list of strings now, I'm just going to pass in the whole user like so. So what impact does this have on my code base? How am I going to reconcile this? Well, inside of the signup method, I can now destructure all of these properties off of the first argument. So I'm going to wrap that entire list of properties with the curly braces, because now I'm going to pull all of those properties off the user object. And the end result here, what I gain by taking this type of approach when writing functions, or writing functions that take a lot of different arguments, is that I do not anymore have to worry about the order of arguments that I'm passing into my function. So I could pull off the username first, but there's absolutely no requirement to do so. I could pull off the username first, I could pull it off last. I could take the password first, or I can take it second. It doesn't matter. Whenever I destructure properties, the order in which I destructure them does not matter. It only matters that I actually list the property names here. So by taking this type of approach, I no longer have to worry about the order in which I'm providing arguments. I only have to remember that I need a username, password, email, date of birth, and city. And knowing that you actually need these properties, that's an inescapable fact. We can't get around that in any reasonable way. Like, yes, my user has to have these different properties when I sign them up. So we can't really get around the aspect of needing to know what these things are called. What I'm suggesting is that by using destructuring effectively, we can remove this entire layer of complexity of having to worry about the order in which I do destructuring. Okay, so that's the whole thought process here. So let's continue in the next section. I want to talk just one more case in which we would use destructuring, specifically array destructuring. So let's talk about that in the next section.